Welcome, welcome. If you don't know, my name is Jenny Towler. I'm not going to tell you the organisation I represent because I'm a resident of Shoreham, and that's what this meeting is all about. It's for the residents. I've been nominated to chair this public meeting on behalf of ACT, and that's Adur Communities Together. It started off in a pub, as these things do, about 3 weeks ago, when people were concerned about the new Frost development, which seemed to sneak under the radar. And then they saw opposite was going to be the new Civic Centre development. And everyone went, whoa! They did. So all the groups who got together, there's 6 of us, you can see, Shoreham Society, Area, Shoreham Bicycle, Transition Towns, and Over the Moon. And we want more people to help us. Now, it's the first time I know of where voluntary groups have come together and pooled their knowledge and expertise to try and address the issues of some large developments coming on stream now. And we're particularly concerned about the social and the physical infrastructure of our area and whether these developments will destroy what we've got already, basically, and whether our infrastructures are strong enough. So a few things to point out first. This meeting is going to be recorded, and we're going to put it on YouTube. So if your friends and neighbours didn't come tonight, they're not watching it on YouTube now, we'll be sending a link round. It's probably going to be on the Shoreham Society website, and you can watch it there. And in case you missed anything vital just now. This first meeting will be inevitably centred around Shoreham, as what triggered the creation of ACT was the planning applications that I've previously discussed. It's not to negate the concerns of other areas in Ada. It's just that Shoreham seems to be, we've got a huge brownfield site coming up on stream on the harbour, and that's where the development's going to happen. It really is going to impact the town substantially. Also, those developments are about to be decided upon within the year. Other areas are welcome to join us and work with us to present an holistic view of development and how it affects the residents, old and new. So you may have just come to Shoreham, you thought it was a wonderful place to move to, but you too have a role to play in understanding the town that you live in, the area you live in, the people who've been here for a long time, that kind of thing. It's all about sharing. There's a lot to cover. We want to hear from you, but our time is short, so please forgive me if I cut you short. I don't intend to be rude, but we want to hear from as many people as possible. Right, what we want to achieve from this meeting is for a host of residents to jointly use their skills and expertise to influence the decision makers and influence them with solid factual information that they can legitimately use when making decisions on developments. Now, on your chairs, there are some slips of paper which you can fill in and hand to somebody with a badge, white label basically, with a name on it. Doesn't matter who, just hand your slip to them if you have skills, expertise that you would like to share with us. So the format of the evening, it goes like this. We've selected a number of issues to discuss with a time frame of 10 to 20 minutes. And we'll start with development and building quality, parking and transport. We will then break for 20 minutes, giving you a chance to mix and share ideas. Again, people with white labels, go talk to them. After 20 minutes, we'll be back to talk about health education and follow this up with an open discussion. There's a roving mic in the auditorium, so put your hands up if you want to speak, and I'll direct the roving mic to you. Once again, I might cut you short to allow others to speak. I am going to use my mobile phone to time time the sections, so you may hear some ringing. So finally, and this is very, very, very important, be kind. We're a broad representation of people who live in Shoreham. We don't all come to the issues with the same experience or views, but we're all ready to listen to each other to make the town the best it can be. In particular, councils and planning officials all have a job to do, right? Sometimes it can be very difficult to deal with conflicting wants between central government and developers and what residents want. So please do not aggressively target anyone or a political party in your comments. So have I got your understanding on that, please? That's seriously very, very important. Okay. So what we want to come out of this meeting is more people to become involved in ACT so that the residents' voice is a very loud one. And we want to be constructive and not destructive. Now, are you all happy with that? Yes, excellent. Right. So, I'm new to all this equipment, so I'm in charge of the slides, so it might go terribly wrong, but please forgive me. Right, so, first slide. Oh. Right. I'm going to present this with my friend, Andy Harvey, who I always call Trevor, and I don't know why, but it's a joke. I really don't mean to this. And he's going to come and help field the questions. Now I'm going to move the slide along. Yes! So you can see how we're doing that there, right? It's a cracking start, isn't it? Right. And I'm going to put the timer on. You've seen me do this. I'm charged up. The clock is there. 14 seconds plus 1.
Can you give me that long?
No. That's for everybody. Right, 20 minutes from now. Okay. So, the current planning process is generally in favour of the developer. Even more so now in Ada, because Ada has missed their housing targets for 3 years running. So that means they have to build more houses or housing units over the next 3 years than they thought they would have to. So it's around about 288 houses a year now. If the planning committee refuse a development, the developer can go to the planning inspector, who can overrule the council, and the council pays the cost of the appeal. So to reject an application, the reasons have to be valid and strong. Yes, here we go. Ada has been told by central government that we need to build around 388 housing units a year. Brownfield sites are preferable to build on, and Shoreham has a huge brownfield site on its doorstep in the Western Harbour Arm. With the land constraints and the housing target to meet, the only way is up to make development that includes affordable housing and make the development viable. So affordable, as you may know, does not mean social. There is a probability that a significant number of new flats are sold as second homes. So we want to think local, not second homes. So we're going to ask what your views and solutions are. This is a lovely slide here. Huge growth in units, people and cars. You can see what that means. What we've done is we've put the numbers of housing units that are currently on stream. So you can see there's quite a lot going on there. Right. And now, no, that's parking. So Andy, if you want to say something, and then we'll open it up to you and ask questions.
Lovely, thanks, Jenny. Yeah, I'm tempted to start by saying good evening, Shoreham, because I've always wanted to stand here and do that, but I mustn't. Yeah, anyway, I'm Andy Harvey. I represent the good people of Kingston Beach, further up towards the harbour mouth. And we came together because of various development plans there have been for the Howard Kent site, which many of you will be familiar with. And we just wanted people to know about it because we were discovering that just nobody knew about it. It wasn't being advertised, and people needed to be aware of it. And so to join with this organisation has been a good thing for us, because that's exactly where we want to be. We want people to know about it, and seeing all you here tonight is terrific. I've been asked to introduce a topic of who enforces building quality, and it's not an easy starter for 10 these days. And I've got 2 minutes because Jenny's going to pull me off with her shepherd's crook if I go over that. So as you've just heard, the government has set targets for house building, and in 2019 that target was 300,000 homes per year, and Jenny's just told you what that means locally. So our council has gone to great lengths to provide an overview for future development within Ada. There's now very well-thumbed documents called the Joint Area Action Plan and the Ada Local Plan. There's an expectation that the great majority of development that goes on will be undertaken by the private sector, and that's exactly what we've seen happening across Ada. Large and small development companies, local and national, with a variety of track records, have submitted proposals for the developments of a range of sites across this area. These all have to be approved by the Council Planning Committee if they are to be realised, and therefore have to conform to the strictures of the Council's grand plan, he said without a hint of irony in his voice. As a general principle, private sector developers work on a 20 to 25% profit margin, and they have great costs as well. The cost of the site. Brownfield or greenfield sites both rise in value by factors of 10 once they have received planning permission. There's remedial work. Many of our sites are brownfield sites, and there are things such as flood defences, drainage, removal of contaminants, which add to the costs that the developer will incur. Building constraints imposed by the council in order to grant planning approval. If height and density of developments are reduced, for example, fewer units means fewer potential profit margins, or smaller potential profit margins. There's a need to provide affordable housing and community facilities, which again adds to the cost. So all of these go to the developer, and on expensive and awkward sites, which many of the sites are, particularly on the Western Harbour Arm, these costs will be high. So to make their proposals financially viable, the risk is that it's the design and the building quality that will often suffer. Together with this is the move towards lessening the influence the council has over developments awarded to the private sector. Developers employ independent consultants to report on areas such as soil analysis, parking, drainage, and so on, who will provide a report or a certificate as required. While agencies such as West Sussex Highways, Southern Water, and the Environment Agency will also be involved, in many areas developers are now able not just to mark their own homework, but they actually award their own exam grades. There is no requirement for building services to sign off a development, as we may once have been familiar with. As we've seen with Mariners Point recently, any involvement the council has tends to be retrospective when an issue has arisen, and then often only when that's driven by residents. So in conclusion, developers these days are pretty much exempt from criticism about the style and appropriateness of their design. They need take little regard of the existing features of the area or how their proposal matches other developments planned in the locality. Nor indeed need they look to enhance this wonderful part of Sussex by producing the style and standard of housing needed by local people. So, can we have an influence over how Ada is developed? As individuals, our voices are small and easily overlooked. But look at you all tonight, together. This is the purpose of what ACT has been set up for, to give each of you a forum for your voice, and so create not many small voices, but one loud trumpet which will not be ignored. So thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for joining in.
Right, any questions? Any comments from the floor? Yes, we have people with microphones. And you see a hand on the front row, 2 hands on the front row. So, madam first. Sorry, madam.
Is the number of homes that have to be built, is that up for discussion? I understood that Gove was challenging some of that.
Well, yes. I mean, no, it's not up for discussion unless the government decide that it's up for discussion. I personally would think if you asked the Michael Goves of this world who are running housing, if you asked them with a loud enough voice because we're a special case, they might listen. But they might, we just don't.
Yeah, I do understand that when the targets were first introduced, that there was discussion, and Ada being the site that it is, the quota was reduced slightly because, as you'll appreciate with Ada, if you go north, you hit the national park. If you go south, you fall in the sea, and there's little scope for going east or west either. So, as Jenny mentioned, the only way is up, and so I think our quota was kept down a little bit, but I don't know if there's any room for discussion at this stage now.
Hamish, you wanted to work too? Hamish? Yeah.
We've already living on Shoreham Beach, and we've just got the Box Park development, which some of you might know about. It's one of the most ugly developments I can possibly imagine. My question is, have we got? Do members of the public have any access to criticising design before it goes up? Because I'm not aware of. We do have any aspect, any voice over that.
Yes, certainly. I mean, many of you will have passed on your comments through the public page of the council website so that you can comment and share your opinions about it. There is no room in that to discuss the design features of it. There are specific criteria, and the fact that we think that it's a poor design or it's ugly is not one of those factors. So no, that doesn't come into it at all.
I was involved in the Kingston Wharf proposals, and we, the objectors, were able to make some comments about design and perhaps had some small influence. So it's not true to say that we can't affect the design in any way.
Hello. How many people who have applied for planning permission with all this development have actually got it?
Oh, how many have got it at the moment?
Free Wharf is definitely going ahead. Right, okay. Kingston Wharf approved. Free Wharf approved. Mariners Point built. You've all seen Mariners Point. Caxton House, that's I quite like that development. New Monks Farm, they've got a percentage of it approved. I think it's 260 approved and 340 outline planning permission. Albion Street's approved, but that actually is a council project. So
yeah, and that's under construction now.
That's under construction now. Howard Kent has not been approved. It's up this year. We haven't got, well, there's Frost's and the Civic Centre. Those are the big ones coming up in the next 2 months. The Mannings has been approved as well, but I think that one's a bit tricky, that one, because that's got a certain amount of housing there already. They're just going to add another floor to it. I mean, to belt it. Right. Okay, there's a man over there waving desperately.
Well, not desperately.
Hang on.
When they decide what number...
Sorry.
We'll come back to you. This gentleman here's got the microphone, so we'll have that first.
When the government decides which areas have to develop and provide units for people, we have an area where people move to massively and the council's duty-bound to look after them. Is that what dictates the number of units you then have to build? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes,
People
I
move in this
understand what you're
area
saying. I'm-
massively, and the councils then have to look after them. So is that how the government works the figures as to how many units they have to make to cater for this?
How the government works out its figures is certainly
Okay, right,
a
it's
mystery
up
to me.
here.
But, I don't think it's led by the fact that there are a number of people who find this area attractive and would like to move here. I don't think that's the factor that leads it, certainly.
Do we have an expert in the room that can answer that question? Put your hand down if you can answer the question. If you can't, lost that. Okay, we can't answer that question. You can answer that question. Lady there, who can answer the question. And then we'll go back to the gentleman at the back because we've missed one.
Yeah, so I'm not an expert, but I have read a piece of research which I can dig out and share that says the government's decision on house building was based upon Office of National Statistics figures for the growth of population by demographic. And those figures were found to be incorrect. And so there have been cases where other locations have been challenging development numbers within their localities based on the fact that the Office of National Statistics figures and their original research was actually incorrect. So there is a technicality that can be followed up, but it's one of those technicalities that they don't really like to let you know about. So I will try and dig that research out and share it.
Please do.
Right, thank you.
We will have an email address where you can send that information to. Now, the gentleman right at the back there, hang on, there's a microphone coming to you.
It's the Galloping Gourmet, if anybody remembers that.
Really?
Thank you. I just introduced myself. I'm a councillor, Councillor Lee Cowan. I'm not actually on the planning committee right now.
There you are, yes.
Hi.
You've been in the
You
sun.
recognise me.
Do, yes.
How you doing? Yeah, I just wanted to point out that there is actually one development missing from the chart, and that's the one in West Sompting, and that's 469 homes. That counts as Ada. It is actually still Ada, not Worthing. So, and that has been approved.
That has been approved. That was approved, what, 2-3 weeks ago?
Yeah, it was outlined, I think it's outlined for 90 odd houses, and then full planning permission at a later stage in this separate phase.
Yeah. So as regards Sompting, I mean, we want to go out as far as Sompting. It's part of Ada, but given the short time that we had, and because we've got these 3 big developments online at the moment, it's juggling. You can only do so much. Anybody else? Gentleman there on the end.
I love that. Can the local roads cope with 3,222 new cars? And is there designated parking spaces for all those vehicles?
Right. The next subject, I believe, will be parking and transport. So.
Okay. The other one I was going to ask, if I can, is social housing. How much of that is actually for social housing? We hear about the high numbers of people who are waiting for rehousing, local authority waiting lists. How many of those will come off the local list for these plans?
Shall I?
You shall.
Right. The Albion Street development is entirely social housing, and that's a council-led development. But of the developments which are online, the 3 main developments there, certainly 2 of them have not put in any provision for social housing on the grounds that it would not be economically viable. Now, it seems that that is a valid excuse these days, which it certainly never used to be. And there was certainly something in the news today, I think it was in The Guardian, where developers are now pulling out of producing social housing in their future developments because of the fact that they are required to pay out for remedial action on some of their previous developments, particularly companies that have been involved with cladding issues and so on. So social housing seems to be the thing which is easiest to get out of these days.
Hang on. Can we take a microphone to that person? And actually, did you mean affordable or social?
Affordable, yeah.
You meant affordable.
Again, Kingston Wharf is different from the other developments. It's a combination of of so-called affordable housing. We'll see quite what that means, social housing and shared ownership. So it's different from the other. It's different from the other one.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, yeah, no, true.
Yes.
Can I just quickly add? Shared ownership isn't necessarily not very frequently affordable, not truly affordable.
Shared ownership, I think that was the discussion.
Yeah, I'm shared ownership. Sorry, what did you say? It's not affordable.
Who was the lady? Who put your hand up? Who last spoke? I can't see you.
No. She's over there, I think.
She's over there. Could you repeat what you said? Yeah, well, shared ownership is not the same as affordable housing. That was what was said. Right. I'm going to close it down. There was 2 people who had questions. I'm afraid I might have... There's a little bit more. Right, one there. Right, lady with the mic.
Hi, I'm also a councillor and I'm also not on planning, but I'm here as a resident. So I wanted to clarify about the affordable, social, rented, etc. housing. They're meant to build 30% affordable housing, but as we all know, affordable means only 80% of the market rent, which is certainly unaffordable to my children in their 20s and 30s. So the houses are not affordable. It's a very skewed scheme. Shared ownership is also very unaffordable for people. Social housing is what we would think of as council housing, so it would be at a rent that is genuinely affordable for people who are on housing waiting lists. At the moment, there are something like 750 households on the ADA housing waiting list, and some of these are genuinely desperate individuals. All of these schemes don't do enough to address that, and this is a personal view. I believe that we should, as a council, mandate a level of social housing so that we can meet the needs of the people who are in desperate need of homes, rather than building second homes for people.
Right, okay. There's the lady over here. I know there's another councillor who'd like to speak, so I'll let her speak, and I'll quickly ask you what your question is, and then that's it.
I'll be very brief. For clarification purposes, the new Monk's Farm, 600 units equals 1,434 people. Was that IKEA by any chance?
Yes. Okay. Kat, briefly.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit more to that answer. The question was, what is the council meeting in terms of its affordable social, and is that taking people off the housing list? Well, to a massive extent, no. Gabe is right, it's about 750 people sitting on the waiting list. But things that we have to think about is that Albion Street, 45 units, yes, but there was about 30 there previously, so that's only 15 additional units.
Yeah.
And when the council talks about Ravens Road, again, those were social housing before that.
Yeah,
so you have to really challenge that narrative. It's not taking any, so those really effectively are not taking anybody off the list. And when we go back to what Gabe was saying, she's absolutely right. It's 30% affordable, but it's only 11% of that 30% that is social housing. And what will happen is the developer will start to argue, oh, I can't afford actually this social housing side of this. They'll probably hold on to the market rent and market sale, which is deemed to be affordable, but that's only 20% off of the market rent or the market sale. So when you think about it, the social housing element, only 11% of that 30. So that's why we have to fight for it.
Okay, thank you. Can we just, this lady's got a comment, and then we'll shut this one down. But you can always come back at the very end.
It was a question on the numbers. At the beginning, you said there were 300 units.
300.
That needed. Was that
388.
Is that per year?
Yes.
Okay, so this 1,685, that is at the top. It says we've got 1,685 units.
Yeah, that's over a period of time.
That's over a period of time.
Okay.
5 years. Yeah.
So it's more than the target. So what we've got here is more than the target. So we've got room to reduce that.
Yes, yes. I mean, Free Wharf, which is being built at the moment, it's got 540 housing units on it, right? Now, they've basically said that for the Western Harbour arm, it's a minimum of 1,100 housing units. Well, what they've got proposed at the moment, they're over that. They're over that. And there's 4 more planning plots or plots of land to build on. So it could go way over. Right. Right, thank you very much for that. Thank you.
My pleasure.
That was good. That was good. We're now going to move on. Yes, round of applause. And we're now going to move on to that dreaded subject, parking. Now, presenting this is Barb O'Kelly, who's passionate about pollution.
Stupid place.
It is a stupid place for a chair. I'm going to move it
Okay.
because I've tripped over it already.
Especially when you're blinded. Right, I'm going to talk about parking
I'm
first,
10 minutes
and
on
then
this.
I've got a double slot for pollution.
20 minutes.
Right, this is slightly over 2 minutes, I have to confess, but I'll carry on. In the local plan in 2017, it stated that on-street and off-street parking was insufficient and could result in parking problems, resulting in traffic churn, which is all the cars driving around looking for a parking place. So we all know about that. But in spite of that, that assessment, a number of developments along the 259, I'll go this side, have been approved with seriously inadequate provision of parking spaces. Taken all together, including the 3 potential new developments, there will be an approximate shortfall of 500 spaces. That's in the town centre and including the developments immediately near on the 259. So the total shortfall also includes the 50 to 60 cars from Focus, where the employees park in the civic centre. So they'll have to find somewhere to go when they start building the civic, if they start building the civic centre. We appreciate that due to climate change and pollution, local authorities want to encourage people to drive less, and we fully agree with that. However, until the transport infrastructure is in place and a cycle lane is built, people will still own cars and they'll need places to park. So while the principle of people using their cars less is great, that does not mean that they won't buy cars. Right, West Sussex County Council has a parking calculator for new developments, and that's to discourage car ownership, which at the moment is increasing. The parking guidance allows the developers to have a reduction of recommended parking places if the development is near a public transport hub. It allows the developer to reduce the number of spaces by up to 10% and allows the developer to move a development into a different zone. So if they wanted to say, well, this development's really close to the train station, so we'll be able to supply fewer parking places. And that has been done. It was done with the Frost development. Developers are expected to do a parking survey to determine the amount of available on-road parking. The surveys are often flawed. I know for sure because I went out very late one night and I compared what the survey had done with what I counted for free parking places, and there was no comparison. For example, the parking survey for the Civic Centre was done when Caxton House was largely unoccupied, the Mannings was empty, and the excess of 50, 60 cars from Focus were using the Civic Centre car park. So it was an invalid parking survey. The mitigation measures put forward by developers to alleviate the impact of local traffic on that the development is having are car club, travel plan, and vouchers, and a large number of cycle spaces. Focus had a travel plan which very obviously has not worked and has not been enforced. And it's down to cooperation between the developer or the occupants and the council to enforce the travel plan. We would like West Sussex County Council to provide evidence that car clubs and travel plans are actually effective. We would like Adur Council to scrutinise more closely the car surveys and enforce the travel plans, and in cooperation with local residents, provide a long-term strategy to alleviate the parking problems. I think it must drive people mad trying to park even near their own homes on the streets around Shoreham. So that's parking. So,
any questions? Oh, don't fall over. Have you just kicked some glasses?
That was your champagne.
No.
Oh.
No. Right, gentleman at the halfway down there. Jason.
I'm not sure I'll be able to answer them, but we'll try.
If the council figures for parking are known to be flawed, then can we legitimately challenge them?
Yes. We could legitimately challenge them, yes. And to some extent, I think they have been challenged in the complaints or what people wrote in to object. The objections in some of them did challenge the parking. I challenge. Pardon?
Has anything actually come from that?
Not in my experience. Yeah.
But aren't they individuals challenging rather than one big group? That's the point.
It was challenged through area, so that was one quite big group. No, that was relating to Ravens Road, where they said you could park on both sides of Hebe Road. Now, if you know Hebe Road, you know there's no way you can park on both sides. Yeah, the bus plus the narrowness of the road. And that was included in our challenge, but it...
Man with his hand up, over there. Oh, well, you had your hand up.
For a small woman. Mine is more really a challenge to the thinking. I can't help thinking that, I understand there's a parking problem, but shouldn't the thinking be around something that's just much more radical? Because, can we just keep on, allowing this many cars to sort of happen? One would be hoping that a group like this might be trying to sort of put forward some more sort of, as I say, radical ideas. So, maybe people should be pushing the council to say, yeah, okay, developments, but in actual fact, if you want to come and live here, there's absolutely no room, no way that you can own a car and live here, because there's public transport very close to where this development is going to be, or whatever. I know it's tough, but surely something's just got to change, and our whole life can't be centred around cars and the need of car parking.
Hang on.
Chrissy, you need a mic.
You need a mic, but we could actually say that Chrissy will be talking about transport very shortly.
I was just going to say, I don't disagree with reducing cars, but when I was in Hove, they were proposing to build flats on the top of the perfumery, and they said they'd offer them to people who didn't have cars, but I couldn't see how they were possibly going to enforce that. Realistically, most of the houses are going to have a car, unless a massive amount is done to public infrastructure, public transport. I don't see how they're going to enforce it, even if they say they're going to do it. And the developers aren't going to take the hit on the money, are they? I wouldn't have thought.
No. Now, there's a lady down here. Was there someone with their hand up? Lady? No? No? But another gentleman? There you go. Hand up, and then Jason can pass you the...
Does the council have any influence on the way they run the parking, meter people, in that I live in the middle of Shoreham, and the actual pavements are often 60% blocked by the cars that don't want their wing mirrors knocked off. In various parts of London, they have parking areas where you cannot go beyond that, and if you do, you get fined. We have to have some control on this. You cannot walk down single file most of the time in the middle of Shoreham during the peak period of times. Does the council have any policy on that, please?
Could I just ask, relating to you and getting back to the lady who said about a radical solution, I believe, I haven't lived in Shoreham that long, about 12 years, but I believe there was an idea put out by the council to have restricted parking, and that it was turned down by the people who lived in the centre of Shoreham, who are the people most affected by the parking problems. And once again, I don't think you can tell people they can't have cars until the infrastructure is in place. It's a cat and a mouse situation, because the infrastructure won't be put into place until the council gets money from developers or the central government to put the infrastructure in place. So it's a devilish problem.
No, because in Sussex, you're allowed to park on the pavement. Right, okay. Ladies over here, or gentlemen.
Okay.
That group there.
Okay, I've got a microphone here. I live in the town, and I have often wondered, because we don't have any form of restricted parking, how many people come in each day from outside Shoreham. They use the trains, they work in Shoreham, they don't want to pay the car parking at the British Rail train station, so they park in our streets. And that creates one heck of a backlog. It's a problem.
It is a problem. We agree. We don't have the answers, but hopefully over the next few years, the next few months, we can come up with some. These people here have been waiting very patiently.
Hi. I have read during a previous sort of planning issue that I was trying to object against a 2008 report which was put together by the Shoreham Society, I believe, and some other members, and this is in relation to both parking, pollution, and also to building materials and style, which I don't think we quite gave enough time to, but I understand we're on a time schedule. I think that one of the most powerful things that can be done from something like this is to create a report which is going to provide a cohesive approach that people can follow and can be singing off the same hymn sheet. It's particularly in relation to one of the first questions, which was, do we have any input on how these things look and how they are built and how long they last for? We're in a marine environment, which means that a lot of the things we build are degrading at a rate which is far, far faster than a lot of these developers understand.
Yeah.
And as a result, we're left with buildings which look shocking very, very quickly. So in terms of the views, in terms of the traffic circulation, in terms of the materials that we use and the longevity of these buildings, we've got to have a report which we're able to refer to collectively in the future.
Excellent. Very good idea. We'll take that away and hope you'll be involved in that.
Can I just follow on, since I was the other person with my patient hand up? In respect to the parking, it seems to me that you can fiddle around with the system and the numbers, but it perhaps needs a slightly more aggressive approach. We've had these blocks built. Sorry, I forget the name. The 3 blocks that are by the Sussex Yacht Club. They are previously they were on paper, but now they're built. And as I drive past, I observe that they are the parking is fairly well filled, and it strikes me that they could be an extremely powerful site study of a block which is well under capacity and already has its parking filled. In other words, evidence with which to disprove the claimed numbers.
Yeah, okay. Right, now actually, this is where I'm going to cut this one short because, Chrissy, if you'd like to come up and do the transport bit.
Going to do pollution?
Oh, you're going to do pollution? Right, let's do pollution then,
I
because
think
you've got
it's next.
8 minutes.
8
minutes. But those of you who had questions, go and talk to somebody with a white label and we'll listen to your questions and try and answer them, or you can help us find the answer.
Okay.
It's all yours.
Timer on. Right.
8 minutes.
8 minutes. The High Street, as you all probably know, is an air quality management area because the NO2 levels have exceeded government guidelines over the years. The automatic monitoring machine on the High Street measures nitrogen dioxide and has recently been converted to measuring particulate matters 2.5, which are the really, really small ones that are the most dangerous. So that's a good move. NO2 is also measured using diffusion tubes, which you can spot if you look up. It's about 3 meters up off the ground onto some of the telephone poles in various places. They give sort of an average reading over a month. PM 2.5 are the minute particles, and they can enter every organ in your body. and they create many health problems such as asthma, heart and lung disease, dementia, diabetes, and I'll stop there. Air pollution contributes to between 30,000 and 40,000 early deaths in Great Britain. England has legal guidelines for pollution levels. It's 40 milligrams per cubic meter for NO2 and particulate matters number 10, which are bigger, and 20 for the small particulate matters. The World Health Organization has much lower guidelines and is lowering the legal level for PM 2.5s to 5, whereas ours are 20 to 25. They have stated that there is no safe level for PM 2.5, so this is a real health issue. At the moment, levels for PM 2.5 are very variable, with some extremely high. They have spikes. Sometimes it's just when there's sea mist comes in, but sometimes, like this last week with the queues on the high street, the spikes have been phenomenal, up to 60 and 70. Let's see, high spikes at the NO2 levels are generally below the recommended average, so that's good. But like with PM 2.5, there are also spikes. And one of the things which we thought that some of you might be interested in doing is keeping an eye on the pollution levels by going to Sussex Air. And on the ACT website, I'll put instructions about how to find out what the pollution levels are. Developers usually model the pollution levels for their site, and sometimes they're based on the council's annual mean measurements. What is not taken into consideration is the cumulative effect of the developments altogether. Every developer of the 3 proposed developments has said that the effect of their development with increased traffic will be negligible. But they are not considering the effects on the pedestrians, the cyclists, and the occupants of cars. And the occupants of cars are 10 times more at risk than a cyclist, because they're usually in stationary traffic, certainly along the high street. The effect of spikes in pollution during rush hours on pedestrians and car occupants is not taken into account. So it's giving an unrealistic view of the health effects when you're walking down the high street or sitting in your car. The developers provide S106 payments based on their calculations of pollution effects from the additional car journeys caused by their development. They do their own assessments. In other words, it's another example of checking their own homework. It is meant to be used to try to offset the pollution effects which result from increased road congestion. So at the end of every development, they say, well, we'll give you £36,000 to spend on combating the extra air pollution or the extra traffic. So what we seriously need to consider is how we can discourage drivers from leaving their cars idling, particularly the level crossings and outside schools. It's just so dangerous, particularly for young people and old people. They're the most effective. That's it.
Any questions? Lady here.
I'd just like to make a comment, because I cross the railway crossings probably 3 or 4 times a day, maybe. And I'm just surprised at the ignorance or the naivety of people of, I mean, when we've been here for about 16 years, and there used to be quite a big sign that was right in the face saying about cut your engines while the trains come. But I've become a grumpy old woman, and if one train goes by, and sometimes there's 3, 4, I will actually go up to the cars and ask people if they wouldn't mind not wasting their money, you know, on their petrol, and turning them off. And what's really lovely is the fact that if you ask people, they just say, oh, I didn't realise, and they turn their engines off. And I just wonder whether I'd had thoughts about some kind of campaign around the railway crossings, both of them, remember, because we've got the other one near McDonald's, which is, it must be a nightmare if you've got to stand there for 4 cars with everything. And I just think it's about the approach to people, because I think I found that before in time, that unless people just don't, it's just not on their radar, they're not thinking about it. But if you actually flag things up, they're really quite keen to help and do something.
I know there's at least 2 people in the audience who have done that, and they got so discouraged by some of the responses they have, and I've tried it, and I tried it with a police car once, because I went to the car in front, and it was a white van, and I said, would you mind turning off your engine? Because we were sitting there for quite a while, and he said, why don't you go and ask the car in front? And I thought, well, I have to, even though it's a police car. And he said he couldn't, because of something to do with the equipment. So you do get a mixed response, and if you've never had a negative one, you're very lucky.
But I think it's very much about how you approach people.
Yes. Well, I was very polite, honest. I didn't say, turn it off.
Next question.
Thank you. That was a comprehensive, if I may say, look at pollution.
Thanks.
One of the crucial areas that isn't mentioned, pediatric-wise, in the health service, and that is the level of pollutants at prams and at children of a young age.
I fully agree, and I think that's why it's such a shame, and I've discussed this with the environment officer, that the diffusion tubes are at 3 meters high. And even the Parliamentary Committee on Climate Change has said it's not a realistic measurement, because and they specifically mention it doesn't measure the pollution levels for the child in the pram.
And all I would do is add to that. All over the world there has been campaigns. It reminds me of Erin Brockovich, for example. And we've now got Southern Water defecating our seas. We've now can only look, I think, personally, and I hope a lot of other people will agree, to developing, if we are to develop, green-minded, and bear in mind that we're in a worldwide pandemic. I think that's all I'm going to say.
Could I just say one thing more? You said about a campaign, Jess, about area has 2 big banners would say pollution kills it. I can't remember, which we were about to use when the pandemic came along, and so we couldn't get people out there to hold it. So we will be stepping up a campaign for the level crossings and also by McDonald's. And I have written to Southern Rail asking them if they could put timers so that people know how long they have to wait, because I think that would encourage people to, but they said no, because they said people might get bored and try and jump across the barrier.
Right. Okay, we're going to stop. We're going to stop there.
I've got one more thing.
Have you got one more thing?
One
but
more.
the bell's wrong. I can cut
know,
you
I
off
heard
too.
it. Right now, I've forgotten what it was.
Oh, excellent. Chrissy, come on.
Yes, and I've also asked if they're not willing to put the timers up, would they put a flashing sign by the barriers on one of their poles and say, please switch off your engine? Because it needs to be high up, and banners are great, but only about 4 or 5 of the cars can see them. So we're pursuing that because they don't reply very promptly. Okay.
Right. Well done, Bob. Okay, so now we're going to move on. Before you just use this, a glass of water for me, please.
Actually, before I say anything about transport, I was going to say about the level crossings, because I actually did have the privilege of speaking to the guy at West Sussex County Council who puts the signs up. And he did say, because we were complaining about them being really small, and he did say that he would contact me when he had a chance to put a new sign up so I could show him where it should go. But he hasn't been in touch with me, and that was some time ago now. I also did speak to someone in Ada Council, and they unbelievably said they didn't have enough money to make the signs. So anyway, so I'm going to talk about, I'm Chrissy, and I'm going to talk about transport. And I'm sure that all of you in this room, plus anyone who's lived in Shoreham for any amount of time, will have witnessed the increase in traffic movement and congestion. Our roads simply can't cope with all the increase in traffic. So it is stating the obvious to say the unbridled overdevelopment in Ada, particularly along the riverfront in Shoreham, directly onto the congested A259, is only going to make everything a lot worse. Barb's already talked about parking problems, the effects of pollution, so I'm not going to go over that again in this presentation, but I'm sure that the people will want to have more discussion about that later. We've also mentioned that our coastal town is between the South Downs and the sea, so we don't have the space to build any more roads, even if we wanted to. So we have to get away from the dominance of car travel and think in a more sustainable way about the journeys we make. So just going to give you a couple of facts here. Did you know that 56% of all car trips are under 5 miles? Did you also know that in petrol and diesel cars, the first 5 minutes of any vehicle journey are the most polluting, as they expose us to higher pollution levels before the engine has warmed up and emission systems have activated? So we've got to think outside the car, if you like. The West Sussex County Council Transport Strategy for Ada says travel behaviours in Ada is dominated by car and public transport. It also says the current cycle network does not meet user needs as it is disjointed and there is limited space and segregation. Now, I have to say, I'm not a cyclist. I'm one of those people who's actually quite frightened by the traffic. But I am amongst the 68% of people in favour of cycle lanes and support the initiatives cycle groups campaign for. I also think more people could be encouraged to walk or use public transport, but there are some problems with these as well. We have I actually think we have good public transport links in Ada, but the buses are also affected by road congestion, and the trains can be slow, and they certainly need modernising, a lot of them. Public transport is also very expensive. Car use is subsidised by the taxpayer. Public transport needs more government subsidies to make it affordable for everyone. A lot of other countries already do this. Again, Britain is lagging behind, or England is lagging behind in that kind of subsidy to encourage people to use public transport rather than get into their car. So the West Sussex Transport Strategy goes on to say, I'll just read this, in the future it is anticipated that some of the current transport issues will worsen if background traffic also grows as forecast. Interventions are needed in Ada that will reduce car travel at peak times. But the timescale proposals in the West Sussex County Council Transport Strategy are from 2022 to 2036. They do mention the Ada local plan and strategic development, but I don't think that along with our council they address the day-to-day experiences of those of us who live in Ada.
Right. Any questions, comments? Oh, yes. Person at the back with their hand up. Right, got you.
Do the developers have any responsibility at all for dealing with the issues we're talking about around transport and putting any money towards it, or is it just completely, once they've built the property, that's the end of it, as far as I'm concerned? Do they have any responsibility built into the system, do we know, for the additional weight that their residents are going to put on the system?
I think it's quite complicated because obviously West Sussex County Council are responsible for transport, and also a lot of the transport is contracted out. So like the buses are run by Stagecoach and so on. So it's a tricky one to answer on a local level, I think, which is one of the reasons why I think we need government intervention. I don't know whether 106 monies could help at all. I don't know.
Sorry, I have a question on environmental pollution. With all the building developments along the river and the huge number of units we're seeing going up are going to produce a lot more sewage.
Yeah.
Where's it going to go? Is it going to go to Port Slade only, or will we need a new sewage farm somewhere?
Sewage is a huge problem already. Certainly when Free Wharf was being built, Area was very concerned about the creaking old sewage system there, and there was lots of interchange with Southern Water. Now they're going to build more. I mean, Free Wharf is right next to where they're going to build the Civic Centre and Frost and everything. And also I know that the waterfront development, they've got problems already with their sewage. I gather there was lots of building rubble left in it, and also that it was built at a wrong angle. So, we've got creaking Victorian sewage system.
I raise that question because I use the river a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
And the river is badly polluted.
The river is very badly polluted,
and
yeah.
Certainly a couple of miles offshore, it really stinks.
Yeah.
And certainly in front, next to Carrots Caff, it really stinks again, and
Everybody,
that's really creaking. that sewage
everybody
plant.
passes the buck when it comes to the
Yeah.
river. The Environment Agency, the Port Authority, Ada Council, we've been batted around from one to another trying to address the river issues. One of the members of area is very concerned about that, and it's just getting down to who's going to take responsibility for it, basically.
Now, as far as I can see it, there are 3 questions. Question one, question 2, and then question 3, and that's it. Hello, it's all
Hello.
yours.
Yeah, just to say that I live on the riverbank on Shoreham Beach, so I certainly appreciate what the previous question was saying. But 2 small ones which kind of go transport and cars. But one is on the beach, which is where I live, there's only a 19 bus, and I've never seen anybody in it. I think the 700 bus is good, and I think there's 19 buses owned by somebody else, but there could be some encouragement to look at things then which might take people off the road when they're commuting. And the other thing is, which I don't think was mentioned earlier, was it on the beach, of course, we're quite cut off, but somewhere there might be residents parking, but I think not. And that might encourage, parking to be a bit easier for residents as opposed to visitors, and cut down the pollution of outsiders also.
Thank you. Was there somebody over there?
No,
with a
I
hand
think that
up?
was the previous.
Oh, right, okay. I think you can pass it down to Jay here. But while you're doing that, if you can go to that lady up there.
Mine is a very quick follow-up.
Okay.
Why are they allowed to sell flats and let residents live in them if the loos are not emptied properly?
Well, free market economy, yeah, and enforcement, basically, and lack of... So, oh, God, everybody wants to talk now.
I just have a thought that, what about introducing a congestion charge? Make sure I'm a congestion charge zone.
Oh.
No. Okay.
Right, those are suggestions.
So just a couple of things with the...
Okay, we've got 5 minutes.
Living in Oxford years ago, when the rivers were horribly polluted, and the only thing that changed that was EU regulation. That ship has sailed. And, so we'll see. And the other thing is, one of the things about transport, now, if you're people that have children that are no longer small children and are soon to be big children and that cannot afford to move out of home, and that without really good public transport, will be finding themselves having to travel for work while still having to live at home. The chances of those youngsters then needing to or wanting to have a vehicle of their own, that increases. We've seen this with others who, their youngsters then become 18 and they do become car drivers. I wonder whether any council statistics or figures look at our demographic. We've just had a census that actually takes into account the fact that youngsters are not going to be able to easily move out of homes into a locality still staying within Shoreham. So they then may end up inadvertently becoming part of the additional transport issue.
There's somebody just up there. We've got 4 minutes, so it's not as bad as I thought.
Regarding transport, I try to walk, use public transport, cycle as much as possible. I've been here in Shoreham about 48 years. In my time, I've spent a lot of time doing care work, and that's involved needing to get to work at very unsociable hours and return home from work at very unsociable hours when there hasn't been any public transport. I've also needed to take clients in my car from A to B, and I'm sure there must be an awful lot of people who have to go to work at a time when there just isn't any transport, and to places where buses don't get to. And I really think that consideration, that needs to be taken into consideration when planning parking, etc.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Jane. I mean, I worked as a social worker, and I know there are lots of visits I couldn't have made if I didn't have a car. I also think there's an issue for safety for women. A lot of women are going to feel safer if they're not walking or not using public transport. So there are all sorts of areas that we have to consider. It's not a simple issue at all.
One more there, and then there's a lady in the front.
I would like to see Shoreham High Street cut off to through traffic.
Yeah.
We
good idea.
have a train service from Brighton to Worthing. We have the A27, which goes in a similar direction to and fro. We have no need to have through traffic in the High Street, and I think that is part of the problem.
Yeah.
Buses in Shoreham High Street only would be lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just wanted to raise a point about electric charge points. The only thing I'm aware of, there's one at the waterfront, I believe. There's an electric charge point, and this would, if we had more, if we have to have cars, that surely, and we're going to have loads of development, it seems to make sense to have that built in from now, rather than a lot more pollution.
I think maybe some of the councillors can help me with this, but I think there's some plan for this for the Civic Centre car park, and also is there one at the Longshore as well, charging? Yeah.
So, Barb has something to say.
Yeah, I think most of the developments do have, they're required, I think, to have 20% ready to go electric charge points, and then they're required to put in the infrastructure for the rest of the spots. But when I spoke to was the Howard Kent people, I said, well, who pays for putting in the final bit for those 80% who will eventually hopefully get an electric car? And they said, well, they have to pay. So basically it's a first come, first served, which isn't very encouraging in terms of getting people over to electric cars. And there are electric charge points at the Shoreham Centre. I believe there's 2 there. And I think in the newspaper recently they said they were putting one somewhere else. There's some at the High Street. Right, okay, right.
Right, there's a lady behind you, Jason.
Hi everyone, I commute from Shoreham to Brighton for work, and I have to use my car because, as has been previously said, I have to travel around to visit families and different settings and so on as part of my work. Unfortunately, I can't use a bike to get to those places, partly because I'm not strong enough or fit enough, but Brighton is also quite hilly. And also, you can't take your bicycle anymore on the train because they've abandoned what used to be the postal carriages where one could put your bike. So any kind of campaign around getting those kind of carriages back onto trains would be really helpful.
Right, thank you for all that. Thank you, Chrissy. Round of applause.